So I think that we have to, muster up the strength to, first of all, adopt honesty. Because many of us come from religious traditions, denominations, households that have taught us this is how you're supposed to act, this is who you're supposed to be. I talked a little bit about that with the young man who played football for my hometown and really was not happy, and now he's a math teacher. This is how you're supposed to act, this is who you're supposed to be, conform to this. You're supposed to be in a suit and tie, you're a man, right?
Or to take your hat off.
Yeah, take your hat off. Open up the door for women.
Pull up
right?
your pants.
Pull your pants up.
Tie your shoes.
Yeah. Right. Which is linked to this white toxic type of this ideal that if you don't fit this mold, right, then you're criminal. Or you're up to no good.
Now, let me just point something out to you, because it's sitting right over there. Everybody look around at Waller and compare his hairstyle to the hairstyle next to him.
Oh, yes, brother.
Now, maybe you're too young to realize this,
That's right.
but when I came to Morehouse in 1979, it wouldn't have been unusual for a senior citizen to have looked over there and said, "Boy, why don't you comb your hair? Why don't you get a haircut?" And would have said to you, "Waller, Spelman is across the street. This is Morehouse College."
Oh, Jesus.
Now that happened. One of the trustees, I could call his name, said that to a student who got off the elevator in Gloucester Hall with earrings. The trustee said just what I just quoted and got on the elevator. So that's the era we have come out of, almost. People are thinking it today, but they don't say it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. I think about my godmother, who is a pastor, senior pastor of a church that she founded, right? And she talks about the struggle of really convincing people she doesn't have to be in a robe. She doesn't have to be in a dress, right, when she preaches, right? Because that's what they say. You don't want to tempt anybody. You want to. No, she preaches how she is, and she is the essence of who she is, right, in that preaching moment.
Oh.
Right? She breaks that barrier for me too.
Alumni back in the day, if they'd heard this sermon today, would have come to me on the side and said, "Don't bring him back." Oh yeah, because their standard of chapel worship is the way Friendship Baptist worships and First Congregational, to give you a picture. But you see, today you're coming along getting your bachelor's degrees in an era when the Eurocentric way of living is under attack. And the rhetoric that is used to convey that is that we're loosening the colonial grip on the Western curriculum, the curriculum of the Western world, which is very Eurocentric. So the seminaries that many of you are going into, the divinity schools, the schools of theology, the faculty are busy divesting the colonialized theology. And people are doing what Tillich is recommending, that the courage to be is the courage to affirm your own identity, who you are. And to just give you one illustration of how difficult that is, that means we're not locked into just two genders. That's the big hurdle. The church is having a hard time with that. There are more than just two genders. And if you believe that that is the ironclad law, then what you're revealing is that you really don't have a very deep understanding or knowledge about human nature and the human species. You don't realize how the whole creation is evolving, changing every day, growing up to be something very different, and people, as Dr. King used to say, just want to be free. Free to be themselves. And there's where the toxicity comes in, because you have institutional resistance in the church, in the government, and in the universities. It's been going on since the beginning of civilization.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, Dean, considering in recent news what's been happening in Florida with Governor DeSantis, and I know you mentioned some of the things that happened in news in your sermon, but what's happening in Florida with Governor DeSantis and the education bills that he has
Talk to everybody.
oh, I'm sorry, and the education bills that he has presented in terms of recently the AP African American Studies course that they have redacted a lot of information from, that does not allow a fully liberated educational experience for African American students in that particular state. And I think that it's interesting that you brought up the idea about the two genders, and I would just posit maybe that we have constructed socially an idea about man and woman that does not fully allow people to be people. Like you said, it doesn't allow people to be free to be themselves. And so in order for me to be defined as a man, I have to sort of conform to socially to these and check off every box that says, oh, I have the suit, I have the tie, I have the certain kind of haircut, and that makes me a man, but it doesn't allow Caleb to be Caleb or Damari to be Damari.
Yeah. Your point that you're making is a powerful and significant point that I feel that it's necessary for me to interrupt you to conscientize everybody in the room as what you just said. Without mentioning it, he has touched on the key problem that the pre-seminarians and the pastors in the room are going to have to really focus on a lot, because this book, most of the resistance in the church is based on how this book is read and interpreted. And we know what Genesis says. God created male and female. And see, this is where this whole controversial thing comes from. God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Don't ever get in your pulpit and say that, because you will be looking for another job. And the people who will put you out won't just be in the choir either.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. You see, there's this stereotype. People have stereotyped the choir. And then they add to it, well, you know, the devil fell in the choir when the devil was thrown out of heaven.
Oh, it's from the ushers to the pulpit and everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amen.
We talk about the whole congregation.
Amen. Wow. No, I think that's a great question, though. But I do think we're going to have to contend with that because people are being more honest about who they are, right? And it doesn't look like the traditional type that we want to put out there, right? And no more are people saying, "Oh, well, you can kick me out your church, but we're going to form our own church, and we're going to have our own places of worship. So this was, I'm serving an Episcopal church. I'm not Episcopal, but I'm thinking about it because of the fact, as an American Baptist, Baptists have a right to choose. But a lot of churches have their own law, right, on how they see things.
Now, did you hear him, what he just said? He is thinking about joining the Episcopal Church. Now, let me just tell you what that really means. He grew up Baptist. But in contrast to the Episcopal Church, the Baptist, black or white, do not let the pastor develop his or her intellectual prowess before an increasingly discriminating congregation. Now, did you understand that? You see, the pastor in the Episcopal Church gets sabbaticals. You get time off to study. You can't just give, and stay up to date. Degrees become obsolescent, and eventually, if you don't go back to retool, your degree becomes obsolete. Everything needs to be updated. Everything is changing. And this book was put together in a very different scientific era. And the pastor, preacher, priest, prophet is an interpreter. And if you're not careful, you'll take this 2,000, 4,000-year-old document each Sunday and drop it on people, bring these verses across all those decades and centuries, and drop it on an era very different from the one it was created in. Different economy, different culture. The words don't mean the same.
Yeah.
And you can mess some people's lives up. Especially if preaching can very easily become dogmatic. Where you speak with such authority, you leave no room for opinionation, for difference. This is why we have sermon talkback.
I was going to say that's another really great point.
Louder and
I was going to say that's another really great point, Dean, because that brings me to literally my next question, and I'll make this probably my last question so we can open up for the audience. But I heard you just say in your previous statement that people will go and start their own churches, because the church is not opening and inclusive of everyone. They go out and find their own churches. And I was going to say we've seen that historically happen. That's where you get storefront churches from. People go out and start their own churches. And then even more recently now, people just leave the church altogether. So where you saw civil rights movements being born out of the black church historically, now you see Black Lives Matter are leading those kinds of movements that are helping black people achieve some kind of freedom in this country. But that would lead me to my next question in terms of the systematic or dogmatic preaching that is coming from pulpits. And I heard you talk about that in your sermon in terms of that your preaching has to be affirming. And something that Dean stresses in terms of what the purpose of the sermon talkback is to combat structural violence, which is something that happens from the pulpit, where you preach with so much authority, like Dean said, that there's no room for anybody to question. And so in this particular space and in this moment, I would like you to talk about the power of preaching something that is affirming, something that, and then also somebody may accuse you of being motivational, and to talk about the difference and the power of the preaching moment versus just a motivational speech.
That was 2 questions.
Yeah, that's 2 questions.
Give me the first one again.
The first one
I have to write some stuff down sometimes.
the first one is to talk about the power of preaching an affirming word. And the second question is to talk about the major difference between, or the power in the preaching moment versus just a motivational speech.
Okay.
Okay, now, I want you to realize that he's asking a question about the kind of language you use in the worship service from the pulpit, the sermon in particular, and since there's so many different translations of Scripture, which translation you're coming from. There are gender-neutral translations now. And so it's very important for the liturgist to watch his or her language. We had an explosion in a worship service in here one Sunday. I won't tell you about it now, but I just want to mention that. So if I get a chance, as we open this up, remind me, and I will tell you about the explosion over the words that a pastor that I invited in to preside over the Religious Emphasis Week, how he created a violent situation right on the platform and caused my choir, which was from one of the local churches, to run out the door. Okay.
Wow.
You ready to respond?
Yeah. So the power of preaching an affirming word. I think Bishop O.C. Allen came here a few weeks ago, and I don't personally know Bishop, but I know people who are part of that movement, that church, that denomination.
You talking about an affirmative church?
Right,
Yeah.
affirming church. I struggle with this idea that we have to say that we're affirming. I think Bishop Allen said this one time.
Oh, wait
It's
a
not
minute.
just
Wait a
a
minute. Did you hear what he just said? That we have to say that we're affirming.
right.
All of a sudden, I realized that this question has two prongs, and you just went down. You went down one of those avenues, and I was thinking about this avenue.
What avenue?
See this word affirming. To be affirming is to be positive,
Sure.
to bless. But the avenue you went down caused the Victory Baptist Church, which became Victory for the World at Stone Mountain, it caused the church to go immediately from having 2,000 every Sunday to having 100. This word,
Right.
affirming.
Right.
The pastor went to the pulpit one Sunday morning. I'm going to invite him. He's been here to preach, Reverend Kenneth Samuels. And he announced that from now on out, Victory Church will be an affirming congregation. What does that mean?
Inclusive. Inclusive.
Inclusive. And the membership interpreted, many people interpreted that as, he's opened the church up
Yeah.
to gays.
Yeah.
The LGBTQIA crowd. Said, I'm not going to stick around here. And they left. The next Sunday, they were not there. Because of one word. And protesters, white protesters, came from out west, like Colorado, flew in here because it was in the newspapers. The Victory was becoming an affirming church. And they picketed the church on a Sunday morning. Let me tell you what the pastor did. It was Victory Baptist Church. He wasn't getting any help from the National Baptist Convention or the Progressive National Baptist Convention. So he put the church under dual membership in the Baptist Convention and joined the United Church of Christ. Same denomination that Otis Moss III is a member of, because they have a much more learned set of policies and beliefs to guide the whole denomination that affirm difference and diversity. So he had got professional help to come in to help him change the congregation. And now they have sold their huge building and moved to an edifice that is commodious just for the size of their people, and they're doing just fine. They're just going right on. Okay.
I didn't know they moved.
Yes, they did.
But wow. But yes, the fact that we have to say that we're affirming.
That's the affirming you
Yes,
meant.
yes, that's the affirming I mean. The fact that we have to say that is just so interesting. Bishop Allen said that this is not a gay church, this is the church.
Okay, now, did you hear?
Like it's just
This is the Vision Church.
the Vision Church.
I went there a couple of Sundays, maybe one Sunday and one time during the week. The congregation was described to me as being the gay church, and most of the members were gay. I think we have one member here. Okay. Now, I said to Reverend Reinhardt, I don't really think they want to be a gay church. I think they want to be the church, and they want people who are garden variety to come.
Right.
You know, not just people based on their sexual preferences.
Right.
You know, they want to be the church universal.
Yeah.
But after some conversations, I began to realize Orthodox Christianity, mainstream Christianity, has been so hostile to the gay community. You'd have to be crazy to be different and sit in a hostile environment Sunday after Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a book in here titled Flaming. The author, I'll show it to you before you leave. This is a dissertation done by a black woman trained in music, done at the University of Chicago. She got an assistant professorship at the University of Indiana, and when Oxford University Press published the book, it was so powerful, she got a tenured professorship at Cambridge University in England.
My Lord.
Now, something else like this is about to happen. You know what book is coming. It's late, should have been out in January. Brandon Thomas Crowley's new book is titled Queering Congregations. It's going to have the effect in seminaries that James Cone's book on Black Liberation Theology had in the mid-1960s. I was in seminary when that book hit. It turned theological education upside down. Now, we need to let you talk some, but the illustrations,
Yeah.
you know, this subject needs to continue.
And I'm sorry, I just want to clarify.
You're taking a lot of time, and I'm taking a lot of time. I want to get to them because it's already going on 8 o'clock.
Okay, all right.
So, I want to hear your response to his question,
Yeah.
and your continuation with affirming. But my question is, here you say you're thinking about leaving where you are now and going to the Episcopal Church. Recently,
He's at a Episcopal.
oh, you're at Episcopal Church.
But in terms of, I hear you when you're leaving
Yeah.
denominationally. I'm ordained by
Baptist.
local Baptist. I'm ordained
Okay.
Baptist.
Okay, well,
Right.
my thing is, what do you think? I'll rephrase the question. Those that are leaving where they are to kind of go and start their own, organizations, such as what we were just talking
Right.
about. But I heard somebody say that instead of leaving the church, they decide to stay in and become this sort of abolitionist, this person that stays in and kind of reconstructs things. And so people that kind of stay in, like say, if I stay in the Baptist church, even though they're not going for what I believe, or they don't accept me, I'm gonna stay in there and kind of reconstruct it. How do you think that person will get? Will you think they will get pushed back, or can you kind of respond to that, and what are your thoughts around?
But it's really hard to do that, right? And I'm not me personally, and this is something I wrestle with in seminary. We like martyrs, right? We like to kill folk, right? He died. He won. Well, I almost cuss. I was like, well, shit, he got up too. He died. And I'm dealing.
That's not affirming.
And that's not affirming, right? But you're dealing with death. You may be in the congregation. Somebody in your family just died, and pastor can't get off. He died. Well, damn it, pick him up, right? Because somebody that just died won't come back to life in my life, and at least I can think about Jesus rising from the dead. That'll help me. And so we like to kill people, right? Because by me saying for you to stay, or for me to stay, or for anyone to stay in a toxic environment, and not every traditional church is this way, I don't want to generalize it, but too many are. To say stay and change it, stay and fight the good fight. Stay and and you might get bruised. We try to theologize it. God is using this for your good. No, people, that's harmful to them, to their existence, to their being. Can't be who you are.
You know what you're not aware of? Raphael Warnock. Everybody knows who that is.
Yes.
You know where he's the pastor. He prepared a PowerPoint presentation on the strategic plan that the officers put together for the next year. And the membership came to the meeting strong enough to pack downstairs in the sanctuary. It was first class. Everything was approved. And the congregation unanimously voted, that's where we're going. And it was just harmony. And then the pastor said, now that we've gone through this, we're going to open up the floor for questions and answers and give you a chance to maybe tweak some of this, respond, help strengthen it. One woman got up, her name is Maud King. And Maud King said, I have a question for the pastor. I want to know, is it true that you're going with a man?
That's not her question.
Now that happened. The church, fell into deep silence. Warnock just stared at her, and she repeated the question. It was instantly the case that the congregation did not want him to respond to that. And so he said, your question is inappropriate. I'm going to go to the next question. She proceeded to cause a scene. The church officers got up from the first row, and several of them went back and said to her, if you don't sit down, we're going to ask you to leave. Now, I'm going to skip and tell you how it came out. The church had to take her to court, and the judge ruled in favor of the congregation and expelled her from the congregation.
Jesus.
Today, she is a member of the Friendship Baptist Church. Her husband was a deacon. Eventually, he left. Her daughter played the piano. She left. Now, that, my friend, would probably take place a lot of places if you push this too hard or in the wrong way. But you know what she did? she picketed the church and got other people to join her, just a small little group of people. And she parked outside of his house and started watching when he came and when he left.
Wow.
Yep.
I've heard of that before.
And she grew up in a parsonage. Her father was a pastor.
Jesus.
This is what you can be up against. The church was 100% for Warnock.
And if I can add something there, Dean, this is why a lot of people in traditional church settings decide that they're going to marry, they may have been with their partner or they find a partner. I'm going to get married because I can't get a church unless I'm married.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But I declared to myself that if I'm not ready to get married, I won't be married.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what these people with those rules forget? They forget that Jesus was a bachelor.
You preaching mighty well today. My. They don't preach that
You
text.
see, what they really forget.
They don't preach that.
Now,
They don't
if
preach it.
you think that's something, try this on. They forget that Jesus had hips.
Wait. And body. That's what the song said. Hips, legs, and body. That's what the song says.
Yeah, now, I'm not saying nothing else about that. But if you want to know what I'm talking about,
Thank you, Jesus.
get ready now. I'm getting ready to put the skunk on the table.
Put it on the table.
Are you ready?
I'm ready to smell it.
Smuggle the spinach.
Go to my Facebook page and just scroll down just a few till you come to the latest book
Oh my,
that I have recommended.
I saw that one.
You get this book and you will be introduced to the world that is coming based on the Bible.
This one? The Holy Queer.
Okay? What is the title?
Holy
Holy queer. I just go holy.
And guess who is endorsing the book? I think the two most powerful names in theological education, Cornel West and Gary Dorian, both of them at Union Seminary in New York City. And if you, on my Facebook page are there 2 paragraphs of endorsement. Read those 2 paragraphs.
Wow.
Wow. But I do want to answer the power in preaching motivation rather than preaching a word. That's such a hard question. Because when I think of the word, the Holy Bible is a part of my understanding of word. But I also think that my life is an ever-living word of God. Right? That God is constantly writing on the tablet of my life. That helps me to understand this a little better. Right?
Flesh on faith.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Flesh on faith.
The only faith that some people are going to ever meet is when you show up.
Yeah.
And each one of us who claim to be Christian based on our baptism, each one of us, whether we realize it or not, are introducing every day a different Jesus to people who are not in the church. You see, you think the people in this book are the biblical people. I got a surprise for you. You are the biblical people.
My. That's powerful.
just let that marinate.
That's good.
That's
That's
powerful.
really, that's good.
powerful.
That's really
Yeah,
good.
you're the script. You're